Get acquainted with your book. I like this Ball Blue Book, Guide to Preserving. Okay? There's lots of great pictures and recipes, but most importantly, you need to get familiar with canning. You need to know about the glass jars that you're going to be using. You need to know why. The internal temperature of your can is going to get up to about 240 degrees, and that's to help kill off any spores or bacteria that could be present in your food, okay? And if you don't do it properly, there could be some serious issues, such as molds, yeast, bacteria, enzymes, and our good friend botulism. We don't want any of that. So take your time to read over this and get familiar with the parts of your canner, okay? Another part that you really want to get familiar with is the altitude. Find out what your altitude is. For me, where I live at, my altitude will equal 10 pounds of pressure to 11 pounds of pressure, depending on the weighted or the dial gauge, okay? If you don't know what your altitude is, please Google my altitude and your zip code, okay? Find out what it is, because water boils at different temperatures when you have a higher altitude, okay? So learning more about your equipment, everything is right here in the book, okay? I could tell you, but you also need to understand it for yourself, okay? Also gives you some great information about how to clean and sanitize your jars. I know a lot of this seems like it's too much, but you're basically becoming a food factory, okay? So you need to have sterile conditions in order to have the best quality, safe food for yourself, okay? This explains a little bit about the headspace that's necessary and the head spacing tool, which is this tool right here. See where it says 1 inch, if it focuses, 3/4, 1/2 inch, and 1/4 inch, okay? So that tool is going to be your friend. It's a dual-sided tool. You can also use it to make sure that there are no air bubbles trapped into the liquid, as you can see here, removing air bubbles, okay? And then you're going to clean the rim of your jar, put your lid and band on, and then you're going to go ahead and proceed. So, my sweet potatoes have been peeled and cut. Any yucky pieces have been removed and discarded. I have me a bowl of salt, I have my vinegar over there, and my paper towel, my measuring spoons, ready to go. Alright, so the first step to canning is to get you a canning book. I like the Ball Blue Book, Guide to Preserving. There's several different ones out there. You get what's necessary for you. Next, I suggest you can see if you can find a starter kit. Starter kit basic ones will have the funnel, the jar lifter, lid lifter, the debubbling tool, which is also your headspace tool, and your jar lifter, okay? You're going to need you some jars. They come with a 2-piece lid. This is a pint size wide mouth. For reference, this is a pint size regular mouth. The difference is the circumference of the opening. So that way it's easier for you to get food either in or out. I like to use these for liquids and soups that are not too chunky. This one I use for more bulkier type items. They're all going to have a 2-part lid. For example, this is one. This lid goes on there like that, and then you're going to fingertip tighten your rings. Fingertip tighten means you use your fingertips to tighten it instead of using the whole palm of your hand to tighten it, okay? Now, this compound that's on there, that rubber compound, is what's going to seal the jar. You want to make sure that the rim of your jar is free and clear of nicks, cuts, or scratches, so that it's a smooth surface for this to adhere to, okay? And then you're going to put your food in. Let's talk about a couple other things about these jars first. If you notice, it has the markings on there to let you know about how much is in there, okay? Just for reference, when you're doing your headspace tool, you'll hear to leave headspace. Basically, that means don't fill it above the part where it touches the top of the lid, because your food is not going to process correctly, okay? So with your headspace tool, which is also your debubbler, let's pretend this had food in there, and then you would slide this around to make sure you get the air bubbles out so that you don't have trapped air in your jar. Headspace tool is the space between the top of the jar and the top of the food. If you look at your Headspace tool, if it focuses, you'll see that it says 1 inch, 3/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and 1/4 inch. For example, if you had a recipe that called for a 1/4 inch, you would do it that way. 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, 1 inch. Okay? Then, once you have put your food in, you want to take you a little bit of vinegar and a piece of tissue, a little napkin, cloth, or whatever. Okay? You're going to dip it right there. You're going to take your finger and go around your rim like that. Okay? Go around your rim like that to clean it. The vinegar will cut any type of fat or grease that's on the top. You're going to place your lid, center, and then you're going to fingertip tight. Okay? If it's a hot jar, you're going to take your jar lifter and you're going to place it into your canner. Okay? Quick information about this canner. This is a Presto 23 quart pressure canner. Not because you can put 23 quart jars in it, but because the whole entire pot is 23 quarts. For example, if you were making stock, this will fit 23 quarts of stock. This is your airlock. It should always be down when the canner is cool, and it'll be up when the canner is full of pressure. This is your dial gauge. This tells you how many pounds of pressure is in here. Majority of the canning in my area, I'm going to go between 10 and 11 pounds per pressure. This is your steam valve right here. Your steam valve is going to come up through here. You need to make sure that your steam valve always stays clear and that you can pretty much see through that little hole that's down there. In addition, you have your emergency blowout plug. Okay? It's probably not going to happen to you because you're going to follow all of your canning directions the way that you're supposed to. But in the event that this goes past pressure, you ever heard of pressure canners exploding? This will not happen. This will not explode, but this little gasket will come out completely in order to release the pressure inside. You will see it kind of stick up a little bit once it's building pressure, but that's fine. That is what it's supposed to do. All right, going inside to the pressure canner, you will see on the inside you have a gasket. Okay, this gasket should be oiled prior to you starting any type of pressure canner. You want to go ahead and take a nice clean clear oil like such and use a little napkin and get all in there so that the gasket that touches the metal rim here, see, so it'll be oiled and it'll make it easier for you to get your pressure canner lid on and off. You're going to line up your arrow with the arrow that is on your lid, and you're going to make sure that you have your rack inside. Okay, inside of most pressure canners you will see that are used a line of demarcation where you can see where the water line is, where the water was. Okay, most pressure canners now will have lines that's inside of it so that you can see. Mine, the minimum amount of water that can be put in there, the line is right there. It's kind of hard to see, but trust me, it's there. So you never put your jars directly on the bottom. You always use a rack. If you have cold food, let's pretend this was cold food, you would have cold water or room temperature water in there. You would place your jars, you would put your lid on, you would turn your stove up to high and let it build up pressure. When it's building up pressure, we'll go to the next step. For example, if this was hot food, hot canner, cold food, cold canner. Okay? So if this was a hot one, you would have already had your canner warming up with the recommended amount of water in it. You put your jars in and then you seal your lid. Once you seal your lid and your temperature is coming up, you're going to hear the water boiling. You're going to start to see steam coming up through here. Eventually, this airlock will pop up. When it pops up, it will look something like that, okay? And it will stay up for the entire time that there's pressure in there. Even if you don't see a pressure reading here and you see this up, that means there's pressure in your canner. So this will eventually pop up. Steam will come out from here. Once you see the steam coming out from here and it's coming out at a regular amount, you're going to start your timer for 10 minutes to make sure that the air, which is the amount of air between the bottom of the water and the top of the pot, escapes so that you only have steam pressure in there and not just the air. So you're going to get a steady flow coming out for 10 minutes. You're going to set your timer. At that point, that's when you get your pressure regulator right here, and you're going to put it over your steam pipe. Okay, this will kind of rock just a little bit, just to let you know. For your altitude, read your book. In your book, it will tell you what your altitude is. Okay, read your book, and when you get there and you've reached your pressure, right, that's when you're going to slowly turn your stove from high down. You're not going to automatically do it, but just slowly. So like, for example, if we were here at high, building pressure and boiling, getting hot, and once after our 10 minutes is done and we put our pressure regulator on and it's gotten up to the 10 pounds of pressure or whatever is necessary for where you are, you want to slowly turn that down, okay? So for me, my stove, it's somewhere between 2 and low, okay? Then, once you've reached your pressure, that is when you start your timer for processing. So for example, the sweet potatoes that I'm blanching, once they were in there, they're going to be warm. I'm going to have water in here. We're going to let it get up to pressure. Up to let the air out right there. And then I'm going to put for 10 minutes. Then I'm going to put my pressure regulator on. Then I'm going to see my pressure go up to my recommended pressure. And then I'm going to start to turn it down, and I want to start my timer. So an hour and 5 minutes, which is necessary for sweet potatoes in pint-sized jars, an hour and 30 minutes if you're doing quarts, you will start your timer from that point once it reaches pressure. So there is processing time only starting once you reach the pressure. All right? All right. And we're back. So I have my warm jar. Use gloves if you need to. I'm used to the heat, okay? Now you have your clean jar. You're going to place your funnel, and then you're going to fill with clean hands or spoon, whichever you like, your sweet potatoes. And you're going to pack them in there as good as you can without disturbing them too much, the texture of them. All right? You see? Have that in there. Give it a little shake to make sure everything gets shook down. They will cook down some, okay? So get them in there as best you can without like really stuffing them, okay? Make sure you keep your headspace clear, all right? So for these, most recipes say that you could use a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. You don't need salt canned sweet potatoes. Yes, you can also can them with syrup, but I don't know what I'm going to do with the end product, so I just want to can the sweet potato. So I'm not going to add the cinnamon and vanilla and all that other stuff. I'll do that when I'm ready to actually cook it. Okay? So I could use a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Could use an 1/8 teaspoon of salt, but I'm not really here for the salt factor. I'm just here just to bring out that little extra touch of sweetness. So I like these smaller ones that have like a smidgen or a pinch. And I will go ahead and use that right in there like that. Now, the salt that you use pickling or canning salt. This is only salt. Don't get salt that has iodine or anything else in it. Yes, you can use pink Himalayan salt. You could use kosher salt. But don't use salt that has iodine because it'll discolor the food that's in the jar, okay? Now, with some clean water, not the water that you boil the sweet potatoes in because that has starch and a little bit of dirt and it's going to be cloudy. But clean, hot water, we're going to go ahead and pour in, okay? Right over top of that. And the reason why we're using hot water, because we had hot potatoes. Warm jar, hot food, hot candle, okay? So, I have 1-inch headspace that I'm using here. I use my tool to measure from the top of the lid. Another way to do it to eyeball it is the lower rim right there. That is the 1-inch headspace, okay? Now I'm going to use this as a debubbling tool. Flip it upside down. And go in there and try to slide in between and get the air bubbles out. You might not be able to see it from there, but maybe you can see it from here. I had some air bubbles that was trapped in there, okay? You're going to get those out because that's going to prevent your food from having a good seal on it, okay? Double check again, because now your water might need to be adjusted, which mine does. A little bit of water. And I'm good. Next, you're going to take a little corner of paper towel. You're going to take your clean white vinegar. Dip just a little bit in there, okay? And you're going to clean your rim. Careful. Use gloves if you need to, but you want to clean your rim just to make sure that your rim is free of any bits of food that will get trapped and stop this lid from sealing, okay? You see your rubber compound that's there? You're going to put that right on there like that. And then, remember, fingertip tight. Using your fingertips, not the palm of your hand. You're going to place it on there and just give it a little turn, just like that, okay? And that is your sweet potatoes. Then you put it into your canner. We'll be back later. Alright, got my jars all in there. And before we close it up, the little container that we were using with the vinegar to wipe the rims, just go ahead and pour that down in there. That's going to help make sure that if you have hard water, your jars stay clear. Okay? Now let's get it closed up. Alright, so we're all closed up, all secure, in the lock position. We're going to wait for the putting on the pressure regulator. We want to go ahead and crank this up to high so it can boil and get up to temperature. Make sure it's centered directly over the eye on your stove, okay? So we're going to hear the water boiling. This may or may not pop up right away, but we're going to wait till we see steam coming out of here. And then we're going to allow 10 minutes time until we get a clear vent of steam. That is to let the air that's in the can between the bottom of where the water is to the top, allow all that air to come out so that it's steam pressure inside of the can. So I'm going to go ahead and let this heat up and then I'll be back. Alright, so we're back. And as you can see, there is steam coming up. Dial gauge still says 0. You can see some steam coming out through the airlock, and you can see some steam sputtering coming through the steam pipe. Okay, now I don't know if you can see, try not to burn myself, but that's not a steady flow of steam. You see how you can kind of see it occasionally coming up? I'll be back when it's a steady flow of steam and show you. Alright, so we're back. It is not pushed up the airlock yet, but it's working its way up. We still have 0 on the dial gauge, and we have some steam coming up through the vent pipe. So that is why we say we're setting our timer for 10 minutes. Alright, you see the vent pipe come up? And we're going to let that vent for at least another 5 to 7 minutes. But generally we say 10 minutes to allow that. But once you see this come up, that means you're on the way. There we go. That's a steady flow of steam. I don't know if you can see that, but that's a steady flow of steam. Alright. Airlock is up. Steady flow of steam. Pressure regulator. And then we're going to leave it on high until our pressure gauge gets up to 10. Okay? You should start to see it slowly move now that that pressure regulator is on there. Let's give it a second and see if you can see it. It's okay if you see a little steam come out of here. It's fine. But you can definitely hear it. That water rolling in there. So water boils at 210 degrees, but at 240 is what's going to be down in here. We'll be back when it comes up. But it's coming up. That's the time. There we go. Just need about another minute. You can start to see that it's going up. Now come back when we get up to about 10. Alright. And we're at 10. So I'm going to go ahead and start turning this down. Sorry. There you go. Then eventually I'm going to turn it down to 2. And we're going to start our timer now for an hour and 30 minutes because I have quarts. See you later. All right. Now, once you take them out the canner, do not move them. Let them sit on a towel, not the cold stone, but a towel so they don't go through that thermal shock. All right? And let them sit there overnight. You're gonna hear a ping sound. You see how that little bump on top of there, that's gonna suck in. And you will know that it is sealing, but still, don't touch it, okay? It's the next morning. Everything canned and sealed properly. As you can see, the center is down. Nice big hunks. It didn't get mushy. Fully cooked and will be shelf stable for a little over a year. So I just wanted you to see that. The rest of them are over there. So the next day, you take your rings off, okay? Very important, especially for sweet potatoes, because they're sticky, right? So you're just going to use some cool water, warm water, okay? You're going to wash them off. Take a little cloth, clean right up around that rim and on the top, okay? If you notice, that's why I put the vinegar in there. My bottles are clear, no white marks. Then, get you a cloth. Dry it really good, okay? And you're going to store it just like this on the shelf, okay? You don't need to keep the rings on, so you can tell if you lose your seal, but that's sealed, not going anywhere.